Will is a modal verb. Now let's move on to the modal verb will. Will is a modal verb used with process or voluntary actions that take place in the future. Will can also be used to make predictions about the future. For examples, I promise that I will like you every single day. I will make you dinner tonight. He thinks it will rain tomorrow. Now let's go to the forms of will. First is the affirmative form of will. Will comes first in the verb phrase in a statement, after the subject, and before another verb. It is often contracted to apostrophe LL in informal situations. For example, the next Olympic Games will be in London. I'll give you a call at about 6 o'clock. Remember that will cannot be used with another modal verb. For example, we don't say you will must sign a contract or you must will sign a contract. Instead, we say you will be obliged to sign a contract before starting an investment. Also, will can be followed by have to or be able to. For example, you'll have to let me know when you'll start. Or she will be able to be near her parents when she gets a job. Now let's go to the negative form of will. The negative form of will is won't. We don't use don't, doesn't, or did with will. For example, we don't say they don't will tell us very much until January. Instead, we say they won't tell us much about it until January. We use the full form will not in formal context or when we want to emphasize something. For example, I will carry her, but I will not push a pram. Now, in terms of the question form of will, the subject and will change position to form questions. We don't use do, does, or did. For example, we don't say, does the number will be in the phone book? Instead, we say, will the number be in the phone book? Another examples are, will you be home earlier tomorrow? Will I be able to take this brochure home with me? Now, we can use will and won't in question tags. For example, you won't forget to take out the cake out of the oven, will ya? It'll take quite a long time to get there, won't it? Now let's go to the uses of will. The first use of will is certainty in the future. One of the main uses of will is to refer to things in the future that we think are certain. For example, the rooms will be redecorated but all the facilities will remain the same. When you're talking to a child, will you be 5 in September? Now, will is also used to make predictions about the future. Have you decided what you are going to do with the car? No, father thinks it'll cost a lot of money to fix. I think they'll be off in January again. They'll be away, possibly on holiday. Some predictions are about facts, things we know always happen. For example, it's all wool. It'll shrink if you wash it in hot water. Now, some predictions are about the present. For example, that'll be Katie shouting. So this sentence indicates that the speaker is certain. He or she makes a deduction because of what they know about the situation. Now, we also use will for immediate intentions and decisions. We usually use apostrophe LL, not will after I think. For example, when I go and see Marie, I think I'll take her some flowers. What will you do with that soup? Will you just put it in the fridge or will you freeze it? I think I'll have some orange juice actually. We use will and be going for decisions, intentions, and plans. We use will when the decision is immediate and be going to when we have already made a plan. For example, it's too expensive to fly on Friday, but it's nearly 200 euro. It's only 25 euro to fly on Thursday. We'll fly on Thursday then. Great, that'll save us lots of money. We're going to drive to Birmingham on Friday, and Saturday morning we're going to drive to Edinburgh. Next, will is also often used to express someone's willingness to do something or to make offers. It is often used with I in this context. For example, I'll show you where you go. It's just a leaflet that I got. Just the leaflet. Right, I'll go and get your brochure too. I'll give you a lift to the hotel. We also use will to make promises. For example, I'll be there for you. Don't worry. We'll always love you. We also use will to make requests or invitations. For example, will you pass me the salt? This tastes good. Will you give me the recipe? Will you come for dinner on Saturday? Also, we sometimes give commands or orders using will. For example, will you be quiet please? Will you stop picking your nails? It is also used to insist someone does something. But you will have to do it. You will have no choice. Now, will is also used to describe something the speaker thinks is generally true. For example, do you think they should try to make it easier for people to complain? No, because some people will always complain. We also use will to refer to events that happen often. For example, Sia will start to get upset if she has to eat cabbage or meat, like chicken breast. My mom will say, just try it, and she'll start shaking her head and going nuts. No, I don't want to. Mom will never put it near her mouth and she'll start to cough. Will is also used to talk about repeated behavior which the speaker thinks is annoying, does not like, or approve. Will is normally stressed here. For example, he will leave his clothes all over the floor. It drives me mad. Now let's use the verb modal will in present, past, and future tense. First, let's use will in present tense. The marketing director will be replaced by someone new from the New York office. Now, its negative counterpart would be the marketing director will not be replaced by someone new from the New York office. Second, let's use will in the past tense. The marketing director would have been replaced by someone new from the New York office. Now, its negative counterpart would be the marketing director wouldn't have been replaced by someone new from the New York office. Next, let's use will in future tense. The marketing director will be leaving the office in a few months. Now, its negative counterpart will be the marketing director will not be leaving the office in a few months. Now let's move on to the. It can also be used to express necessity or strong recommendation. Although native speakers prefer the more flexible form, have to. Must not can be used to prohibit actions, but this sounds very severe. Speakers prefer to use softer modal verbs such as should not or ought not to dissuade rather than thought. For example, this must be the right address. Students must pass an entrance examination to study at the school. You must take the medicine for that cough. Now let's go to the forms of must. First is the affirmative form. Must comes first in the verb phrase, after the subject, and before another verb. For example, she must have had a lot of friends. Now also remember that must can't be used with another modal verb. For example, we can't say this must can be your brother or this can must be your brother. Instead, we say this must be your brother. Now the negative form of must is mustn't. We don't use don't, doesn't, or did with must. For example, we don't say there doesn't must be any rubbish left. But we say there mustn't be any rubbish left. We can use the full form must not in formal context or when we want to emphasize something. For example, you must not leave any rubbish. Now when it comes to the question form of must, the subject and must change position to form questions. We don't use do, does, or did. For example, we don't say, do you must make that noise. Instead, we say, must you make that noise. Now let's go to the uses of must. When we think carefully about facts, we often use must to express deductions and conclusions from this. For example, he's so small. He must be no more than 4 years old. Now, the first sentence, he's so small, is the fact. And the second sentence, he must be no more than 4 years old, is the deduction or conclusion. He must be out late every night. Maybe he works at night. But warning, we use can't or cannot as the negative of must to deny something or make negative assumptions, deductions, or conclusions. For example, it just can't be true. He can't have left this job. That cannot be his brother. He looks so different. We also use must to express strong obligation and necessity. For example, seat belts must be worn even in the back of the car. I must talk to you about the new project. There must be a minimum of 2 members of the company at the meeting. A little warning though, we had to, not must do to express obligation and necessity in the past. For example, by the time we got back to our bikes, it was dark and we had to cycle home in the dark without any lights. But we don't say it was dark and we must cycle home in the dark. Now, another example is last year teachers must make a report. But instead we say last year teachers had to make a report on each child every week. Now, we also use must not to talk about what is not permitted. For example, you must not park your car outside the entrance. You must not make noise after 9 o'clock. Must and must not often occur in public signs and notices indicating laws, rules, and prohibitions. For example, one example of this is in airline website information. All passengers must present valid photo identification at check-in for all flights. Another example is, you can see this in bus company website notices. Tickets must be retained for inspections and must be produced for the inspection and request by any authorized official of bus airline. Now we also use must to express invitation or engagement. For example, you must come and see us. You must try some of this chocolate cake. It's delicious. You must go and see that film. And we also use the question form of must equity. For example, must you keep playing that terrible music? Why must you mispronounce my name every time? Now let's go to using must in the 3 tenses. First, let's use must in the present tense. For example, you must take some time off and get some rest. Now, the negative counterpart would be, you mustn't drink so much, it's not good for your health. Now, when you use must in the past tense, we shift to should. For example, you should have taken some time off last week to get some rest. Now, its negative counterpart would be, you shouldn't have drunk so much, that caused the accident. Then, also, when we use must in future form, we also shift it to should. For example, you should take some time off next week to get some rest. Now, its negative counterpart would be, you shouldn't drink at the party. You're going to be a designated driver. Next, let's move on to the modal verb might. Might is a modal verb that's commonly used to express possibility. It is also often used in conditional sentences. English speakers can also use might to make suggestions or requests, although this is less common in American English. For example, your purse might be in the living room. If I didn't have to work, I might go with you. You might visit the botanical gardens during your visit. Now let's go to the forms of might. First is the affirmative form. Might comes first in the verb phrase after the subject and before another verb. For example, she might sell her house. This might be true. But we don't say that might can be true or that can might be true. Next, the negative form of might is might not or mightn't. We don't use don't, doesn't, or didn't with might. For example, we don't say there doesn't might be anyone in this house. Instead, we say there might not be anyone in this house or there mightn't be. The question now, when it comes to the question form of might, the subject and might change position to change form questions. For example, but warning, we don't use do, does, or did. We don't say does this might be the key. Instead, we say might this be the key. Another example is we don't say doesn't this might be the key. Doesn't might this be the key. Instead, we say mightn't this be the key. Now let's go to the uses of might. we, most of the time we use might most often to refer to a possibility. For example, I might go to Japan for a month to study Japanese. The dog might bark when it passes by the gate. They might not like very hot food. Also, we use might to refer to permission. It is very formal and is not used very often. For example, might I ask your name? Might I interrupt you for a moment? Now, we can also use might to give advice or make a suggestion sound more polite or less direct, especially when used together with like, prefer, or want. For example, you might like to try one of our wonderful desserts. Next, we often use might plus might have plus its ed form to express disapproval or criticism. For example, you might have told me you weren't coming home for dinner. You might have tidied your room. Now let's use might in present, past, and future tense. Now let's use might first in the present tense. For example, she might be on the bus. I think her car is having problems. Then the negative form of it would be she might not be on the bus. She might be walking home. Now let's use might in past tense. She might have taken the bus. I'm not too sure how she got to work. Now its negative counterpart would be she might not have taken the bus. She might have walked home. Now let's use might in future tense. She might take the bus to get home. I don't think Bill will be able to give her a ride. Now the negative counterpart would be she might not take the bus. She might get a ride from Bill. Next, let's go to the next modal verb, which is may. May is a modal verb that's most commonly used to express possibility. It can also be used to give or request permission, although this usage is becoming less common nowadays. For example, Cheryl might be at home or perhaps at work. Johnny, may you leave the table when you finish dinner? May I use your bathroom? Now let's go to the forms of may. First is the affirmative form. May comes first in the verb phrase after the subject and before another verb. For example, it may be possible for him to get home tonight. Another rule is that may can be used with another modal verb. We don't say this may could hurt you or this could may hurt you. Instead, we say this may hurt you. Now the negative form of may is may not. We don't use don't, do, or doesn't or didn't with may. For example, we don't say we don't may have enough information at the moment. Instead, we say we may not have enough information at the moment. Now when it comes to the question form of may, here's a little warning. The subject and may change position to form questions. We don't use do, does, or did. For example, we don't say, do we may drop you at your hotel? Instead, we say, may we drop you at your hotel? Another example is, do may I leave the room, please? Instead, we say, may I leave the room, please? Now let's go to the uses of may. We often use may to ask for, give, and refuse permission. It is quite formal. For example, when you use may when asking for permission, here's an example. May I leave the room? May we use your phone? Here's some examples when you use may for giving permission. Yes, you may. And here's what it looks like when you use may when you refuse permission. No, you may not. We also use may to refer to weak possibility in the present and future. For example, the economy may go up or down in the next year. I think both are possible. The economy going up or the economy going down. I am not making either one a strong possibility. I think I may go to the doctor today and try to get some antibiotics. And we also use may in form of writing, especially academic English, to describe things which the speaker thinks are generally true or possible. In this case, it's a more formal equivalent of can. We also use may to accept a different view or opinion, especially with well, and or followed by but. For example, 1 month may well be too long to go away on holiday, or I may be wrong but I am going to tell the police about it. The couch may well cost more but it's going to be different. Now let's use may in the three tenses. First, let's use may in the present form. Jack may be upset. I can't really tell if he's annoyed or tired. The its negative counterpart would be Jack may not be upset. Perhaps he is tired. Now let's go to the past form of may. Jack may have been upset. I couldn't really tell if he was annoyed or tired. Now the negative form of that would be Jack may not have been upset. Perhaps he was tired. Now let's use may in future tense. Jack may get upset if you don't tell him the truth. Now its negative form would be Jack may not get upset even if you tell him the truth. And lastly, I want to talk about the modal verb wish. The modal verb wish is used to show that someone wants a situation to be different. The verb after wish is wanted back. So that if you are wishing for a different present situation, the tense that follow wish is a past simple or past continuous. The first use of wish is wish plus to infinitive. When we use wish followed by a verb in the to infinitive form, wish means the same as want, but it is more formal. We do not normally use wish in the continuous form when we use it with a verb that's to infinitive. For example, we don't say I'm wishing to speak to. Instead we say I wish to speak to Mr. Hennessy, please. Now we don't use a that clause after wish when it is made more formal version of want. For example, we don't say, I wish that I visit your house in the summer. Instead, we say, I wish to visit your house in the summer if possible. Also, we can use the subject before the to infinitive. For example, I did not wish my family to know about Sarah, so I told them nothing. Also, when we use a subject after wish, we must also use a verb in the to infinitive form. Alternatively, we can say want or more politely would like. For example, we wish to have a table near the window, please. Now the next use of wish would be wish plus indirect object plus indirect object. We use wish with two objects, an indirect object plus a direct object for expressions of good wishes and hopes that good things will happen to people. For example, I wish you success in your new job. Now, the you in the sentence is the indirect object. And the direct object in the sentence will be success. Next example is, I got my driving test tomorrow. Wish me luck. Now, the indirect object in the sentence is me, but the direct object is luck. Another example is, we wish you a long and happy life together. The indirect object in the sentence is you, and the direct object in the sentence is a long and happy life. Next use of the modal verb wish is wish that clause. We use wish with a that clause when we regret or we are sorry that things are not different. For example, we imagine a different past or present. For example, I just wish that everything could be as it used to be. In informal situations, we usually omit that. For example, I wish I had his phone number so we could tell him the good news. Another use of the modal verb wish is wish plus verb forms in the that clause. Now, the verb forms we use in the that clause after wish are similar to the verb forms in conditional clauses after if. We use the past verb form for present and future meanings. For example, let's compare if we use if in a sentence and if we use wish in a sentence. First, let's use if in a sentence. It would be good if we had a bigger car. But when we use wish in that sentence, this is what it sounds like. I wish we had a bigger car. Another is, if we use if in the sentence, it would be good if I knew how to use this DVD player. If we substitute it with wish, it would look like I wish I knew how to use this DVD player. When we wish something about the past, we use the past perfect after wish. For example, I wish I had known that Charlie was coming. I would have invited Jane. Now, another use of the word wish is wish plus would. We can use wish plus would if we are annoyed about something that is or is not happening, or about something that will or will not happen. For example, I wish you stop making so much noise. Another is, I wish you wouldn't come through in the kitchen with your dirty boots on. In informal situations, we can use wish in the continuous form like this. He's embarrassing everyone. I'm just wishing he would go away. Now let's use wish in present, past, and future tense. First, let's use wish in present tense. I wish Dad comes home tonight. My negative counterpart would be, I don't wish for Dad to come home tonight. Now let's use wish in past tense. I hope Dad would have come home during the summer. Now its negative counterpart would be, I didn't hope for Dad to come home during the summer. Now let's use wish in future tense. I wish Dad wouldn't leave us anymore. Now the negative counterpart of that would be, I don't wish for Dad to stay with us anymore. So, that's everything I got for the modal verb tutorial for today. I hope that you learned something, and if you learned something, kindly give me a DM or kindly comment down below. Those little things mean a lot to me. Um, so, so in this discussion, we talked about modal verbs, their grammar rules, their usages, and some examples of how to use them. And I hope that you could also apply that in your everyday conversations. Once again thank you for tuning in. And have a good day.